Hey, it's Theo, and thank you for joining me. You may have seen my best decks video last week, but a lot of those decks had a bunch of legendaries that you might not have, especially if you're a new or returning player. So I wanted to make this video purely based on the budget decks that pretty much anyone can play. Now, there's a few rules I have for these decks. First of all, they all have a 50% or higher win rate, so you can definitely climb with them. Also, I assume we have the Zilliax. And why is that? Well, because basically everybody should have this. It's the best card in the game, and also it's in every free loner deck. So again, if you're a new or returning player, you can get that in your free loner deck, because it's in all 6 of them, and I also have a video on that if you're interested in checking that out. Besides that, there's maximum 1 legendary per deck, and I'll try and suggest any replacements if it's possible for those legendaries. And as always, I'll have the deck codes in the description of the video. Now let's start with the first free deck, and it's the most popular deck on ladder. And for good reason, because it's really cheap, and it's just really good. The Elemental Mage, and yeah, the legendary this deck has is Saruun, but it's actually not needed at all. It's generally one of the worst performing cards, and yeah, you can definitely cut it, and the deck will still be really good. It will hurt in like the slower matchups a bit, but in the faster matchups it's better to not have it, because you'll never have a chance to play it. And instead of Saruun, you can play like a second Molten Rune, Rolling Stone, or maybe a Sleet Skater. And as always with these tribal decks, you just want to play stuff on curve. So generally, game plan with this deck is just play every turn an elemental. Even if it's not optimal, you really want to be doing that, because if you miss one turn, your Lamplighter is bad, your Overflow Surger is bad. So you really want to focus on doing that every turn, even if it doesn't feel optimal. And early on, this deck is definitely like an aggro deck, right? Just a bunch of early game stuff. Aqua Archivist can cheat out like a Tainted Remnant early on, that can be really strong. And yeah, just a lot of stats early on, and then if that doesn't work, you can just burst the opponent down as well. With cards like that Molten Rune, Spontaneous Combustion, and especially Lamplighter, especially if the game goes a bit longer, you know, this can just deal 10 damage from hand, and if you have 2 of them, yeah, you've almost certainly won. Then the next deck we have is the Frost Death Knight. Now this has a few legendaries, but only one of them you actually have to craft, because Thalnos and Leroy in the core set, so those are free of course. And we have here the Gorgon Zormu, which if you go to the card, you can see it's uncraftable, so that means it's free somewhere. And how you want to do that is go to your achievements, and here we are at achievements. Go to your collection, go to the set the card was from, so this one was from Perils. Now then go to collect all cards achievements, and then you can check at the 30 cards, there's the free legendary. This used to be on the battle pass. It's the rank 1 reward, so everybody got it if you played during expansion. But if you didn't play during Perils, you won't have it. So the way you get this is getting 30 cards from Perils, which isn't that difficult. Especially because it's also a good idea to buy packs from that set until you get a legendary. I covered this already in How to Spend Your Gold video, which I'll link in the description. And if the card says uncraftable, but it doesn't show up here, that means you have to open 1 pack from that expansion. For example, like ETC, for which you need to open 1 pack from Festival of Legends. So yeah, Gorgon's almost free, so the only one we have is Buttons, but that card is kind of necessary. It's a big draw engine, and it's used in a bunch of Deathlight decks, so it's definitely a good craft if you want to be playing Deathlight, and it's not going to rotate next year, so we'll be using it for a while. So this deck is a Frost Death Knight deck, so that means, yeah, you want to pressure early, and then like burn the opponent down in the mid game with cards like Horizon's Edge and Mirror Manipulator, and then finish them off with cards like Leroy, Down with the Ship, and Corpsicle. Now early on, you really want to get bored, and the way to do that often is playing a card like Brutal Bone Buccaneer, then play Horn of Winter, and then play one of your Death Rattle cards with it. And it's going to create like a really sticky board that your opponent will have trouble removing, and then you can push damage for either the board or just trading and then using the Horizon's Edge multiple times in a turn. Now I'd say a big card that's missing in this list is Reska. This is a really strong card, but yeah, we only want to have max 1 legendary, and I'd say Buttons is more important. But if you have this, definitely play this card. It's insanely strong. And then yeah, I'd replace like probably a drink server to play that card. Now, if you also want to counter Elemental Mage a bit better, you can also replace the drink server for another Cold Feet and just stop those elemental chains. Then the next deck we have is Pyro Demon Hunter. Now this deck has 1 legendary, which is Arana, and yeah, this is kind of needed because you really need those priest cards. You can see here the priest cards. It's Acupuncture, Brain Masseuse, and Hot Coals, and yeah, they give you both a 1-drop, which is very important to push that early damage, because this is really hard to get rid of course, early on. and the extra damage of acupuncture and the hot calls. So yeah, it's definitely needed. Just like buttons, it's a tourist, so it's going to be in standard for quite a while still. However, it doesn't really see play in many other decks, so it's really just you'll have to craft it for this deck. Now this is your typical aggro deck where you want to get on board early again with those 1-drops like Brave Mazoos, Slither Spear or Treasure Distributor, and then kind of push that damage constantly and buff your pirates as well if you can. Especially good is if you get Sigil Skydiving on 2 into Roughhouser. So you really want to try and push that damage early on if you can. However, if you lose board, it's not the end of the world because you have all that damage again from the priest cards. You also have the Dangerous Cliffside, and especially this can be good with all the pirate buffs you have in Captain, again the Roughhouser and the Adrenaline Fiend. And also you have Metamorphosis, which is basically like a 6-mana Pyroblast, so still plenty of damage left even if you lose the board. And the Zilliax we have here is the typical aggro Zilliax, which is with the discount and the buff. Then the fourth deck we have is a Secret Hunter. Now this deck has one legendary, which is Product 9. Now this legendary is not necessary. It's a good card in the deck, but you can still play it without. And if you don't want to play it, I'd probably add a second copy of any of these 3 cards right here: Kill Command, Observer of Mysteries, or Workhorse. Now the Zilliax this deck has is a bit of a unique one. It's using the Haywire and Power module, so that means it's a 5/7, and the start of your turn you take 3 damage, but it also doubles its attack, and yeah, a 10/7 if it survives. It's pretty good, especially if you can buff it then also with like the mount or the bananas to make it even harder to kill. And yeah, the game plan with this deck, right, is just try and get bored early with like the 1-drops we have here, then protect them with the secrets, or just get bored with the secret through Hidden Meaning, and you can be annoying with Ice Traps and Bane and Switch. And after that you can again buff those cards to be a bit annoying, try and play around the opponent's AoE. And then playing those secrets and spells will also make cards cheaper in Mental Shaper and Star Strongbow. Especially Mental Shaper is really good if you get it down early for 1 or 0 mana. Just really annoying to deal with. And then Star Strongbow is nice to finish the opponent together with Kill Command. And then the fifth deck I have here is Burn Shaman, more actually recent deck that came up but is performing really well. It's a 1 legendary's Gorgonev. It's usually one of the best cards in the deck, so it's hard to cut. However, I think you can still play without it, even though, yeah, you do make the deck worse. But I can understand if you don't want to craft it, because this card will rotate with the next expansion. But if you don't have Gorgonev, you can play instead a card like Ancestral Knowledge or Flametongue Totem. Now this deck Zilliax again is your typical aggro Zilliax. And besides that, the game plan with this deck is just, yeah, get on board early. A card like First Contact, really strong, of course, to get on board early. And there's a bunch of 1-drops here: Flow Rider, Miracle Salesman, Grovin, Zapper. Although you might not want to play that on the 1, because Zapper can be really good with Molten Magma to clear about any board. Also, it buffs that old Spirit Claws, so yeah, this can be a 1 mana and deal 9 damage weapon. And then we have more damage as well with Pop-Up Book, Lightning Bolt, that also can be buffed again with spell damage from multiple cards like Ethereal Oracle. Even got some Asteroids. So again, generally it's a deck that just yeah, wants to get on board early, push damage that way, but it also has comeback potential because of that Molten Magma with the spell damage, so it isn't quite over yet if you lost the board. And you can also just deal a ton of damage from hand. Now, and the next deck we have is Painlock. It's been around for a while. It's gotten a bit weaker, but I think it's still viable. Now you'll see again a bunch of legendaries in this deck, but only one is the one you need to craft. So yeah, Zilliax, I assume you already have. Leroy is free in the core set. Sheriff Barrelbrim is free if you have 30 Badlands cards, so a bit like Gorgon Zorbo. So that means the only one you actually have to craft is the Pop Guardian Putrid. And I think you can do without it. I mean, it's nice to have either some burst, which this deck doesn't have too much, or just a bit of healing, because you're always going quite low. But yeah, if you don't have this, you can replace it with, say, like a Cursed Souvenir or a Flame Juggler. So as Painlock, the game plan is pretty much you want to get to 8 health as soon as possible, because you want to reduce both the Imprisoned Horrors and the Molten Giants to 0. That's really where the strength of this deck is. And basically all the other cards are there to support that fact. And then after that, you can either heal up to back to 15 with Infernal, so you don't die to some burst. You can play the Speaker Stomper to protect your board from board clears. And if there's like an Unkillax on board, which is really annoying, you can just play Sheriff Barrelbrim and keep that card locked up. And as last deck we have is a Dagger Rogue, and this deck doesn't even have any legendaries at all, not even Zilliax. It also only has 2 epics you need, which is the Swarthy Sword Shiner, which is kind of needed because it's quite important for the game plan, because the game plan is, well, it's Dagger Rogue, so all you want to do is play a Dagger on 2, though ideally this is a quick pick on 2, so you keep drawing. and then just keep buffing that card. So yeah, play this on 2, then hit with it, then turn 3 play the Swarthy Sword Shiner, and then after that again keep buffing. You can already do that turn like a preparation into Harmonic Hip Hop to keep buffing that, or just a Sharp Shipment to turn after, and yeah, just keep buffing that weapon, go face, and hope you kill the opponent before they kill you. Yeah, this deck is very fast, pretty one-dimensional, but it's extremely cheap, so that's why I wanted to mention it here. So these are the budget decks I want to recommend, so they're all really cheap. Let me know in the comments if I missed any decks here, and maybe you can help out some other players. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and until next time.